If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com.
This is the Cats Roundtable with John Catsimatidis.
Everywhere around the world, they come to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come to America.
Good morning, New York. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here, Sunday morning. We have Governor David Paterson, Senator George Borrello. Well, there might be some good news coming out of Albany as far as some of the regulations are concerned. John Terrett on Wall Street, Fernando Mateo. How do the Hispanics feel about the election? Charles Gasparino on the markets. Paul Zuber. More good news from Albany. Special Agent Frank Tarantino on the progress we're making on drugs. Steve Cates, what's going on in the sky. Meredith Burak, and she is a strategist in politics, and she has some interesting things to say. Let's start off the show with Michael Stoller and the Real Estate Report for New York.
Good morning. This is Mike Stoller for the Stoller Real Estate Report. What's happening in the office market in New York City? I have David Falk, who is the president of the New York Tri-State Region for Newmark. So, as I said, what is Newmark today?
Well, first of all, great to be here, Michael, as always. Newmark is a full-service commercial real estate firm that is international. We're public. We have every line of business, every service line, and we are major players throughout. And the change of Newmark from 20 years ago is a different firm. It's the top tier.
So what do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to a few reasons. Number one, Barry Goslin's vision. Number two, many people who grew within the firm that had talent that really started spreading their wings. Others noticed it, and then Barry was able to recruit and bring in fantastic teams across the country who wanted to be part of it, build their business, and the firm is very entrepreneurial. The brokers have the ability to do and create, within their area. And if you are a self-starter, it's a great place to be because you can go and do. We use the expression, the Nike ad, just do it. Just do it.
So with regard to just do it, what's going on today? Rents are up. People are taking more space than they've had over the years. What do you attribute all this to?
Yeah, so rents are up. And it's really interesting. I saw a stat recently, which I thought was interesting, which was in 2009 and 2010, there were both years had about 25 deals a year in Manhattan that hit $100 a foot. In 2024, there was 156 deals. And many of those were over 150 and some were over 200. I believe 14 were over $200 a foot. And we're going to have the same thing this year. I do think that companies are doing well, especially in Midtown Manhattan, which is based with financial firms, law firms, and the financial firms, they wanted to reinvest in their work environment, and others followed them. And so you keep hearing about the trophy buildings. It is true. In the best 50 buildings in Midtown Manhattan, the availability rate is 4.6%.
Wow.
And probably most of that, if not all of it, is beneath the 15th floor. So the demand has been tremendous for the better buildings. It's almost getting to the point where you don't even have alternatives to consider. So that will benefit the next tier. We're starting to see the A-, B pluses who are putting a little money into their buildings. These companies are only moving to buildings that speak to their brand and image. That's a must. So you can't just say we moved to a building because it's inexpensive. That's not going to fly. The building doesn't have to be an expensive building. It just needs to have has to meet your brand. So the A-, B pluses who are starting to improve their first impressions, they're doing well.
What about Hudson Yards?
It's doing great. It did great. Hudson Yards proved the thesis that there was a lack of brand new construction, glass curtain wall alternatives. Now there really doesn't really exist as far as availability. And that's why you're seeing this incredible new discussion, which is Madison Avenue, all these new construction, new opportunities. So you have 43 Madison Boston properties. They already have several tenants lined up for this.
That's with CV Star?
CV Star, it's a 900,000-foot building. It's proven out. The Boston property is a great brand. It's going to build a terrific building. It's right next to Grand Central. It'll be first rate in all the highest standards. You read that the Brooks Brothers site was just purchased recently. You're going to have the Rudin site at 415 Madison. You have 383 Madison, which is JP Morgan Chase. They're going to redo the exterior of that building. 270 Park, obviously, that goes from Park to Madison. That has enhanced Madison Avenue. And then you have the Vanderbilt Hotel site, which will be the next. So that corridor theoretically could have 5 new constructed office buildings that are going to be gleaming, fantastic buildings with great tenants over the next 6 years.
Added rents of, what, 150 or more?
Probably more. You're going to see rents in the 200s, definitely. Definitely. First of all, it costs a lot of money to build a new building like that. You know, if I had to guess, you're probably going to look at average rents of $250 a foot.
Are we going to see more conversions?
We are seeing conversions, which is a great thing. So it started years ago after 9/11. You had the south portion of Wall Street was converted. And then now, since COVID, it started downtown Water Street. All those buildings are being converted, which made it a tighter market downtown because tenants that were in those buildings stayed downtown, relocated to other office alternatives. The great thing now that's going on, there's 14 million square feet of buildings being planned throughout Manhattan in various stages to be converted. And some of those, and many of them, are Midtown East, which needed this because the criticism was always, it's quiet after 6:30 at night. You've got buildings like 767 3rd, 750 3rd, 205 East 42nd, 845 3rd. They're all being converted. So that means it's better for the retail, the restaurants, the streetscape. It really is a good thing for Midtown East.
I'd like to thank David Falk for being here. We could talk about this for the next 25 minutes at least, or the next hour. But I'm definitely going to have you back before the end of the year.
Always great being here.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Meredith Barak, and she's a political strategist. And we have a lot of mutual friends together. I know Governor Rendell from Pennsylvania is a good friend of ours. Meredith, you wrote a new, strategy column about real solutions to real problems and bringing America together. Can you tell us about it in a few minutes?
Thanks for having me, John. I wrote the op-ed because people are exhausted by division, by the negativity. People turn out in the negativity, and voters want real solutions to real problems. And last week's election, also in Seattle with Katie Wilson, showed that when leaders focus on people's everyday lives, they win. And I wrote it because we're at a time where everything feels like a crisis. The cost of living feels out of control. Healthcare costs are out of control. People don't feel safe. People feel like the economy and the world around them is very unstable. And so we need to get back to focusing on everyday realities instead of internal fights. And so what I was trying to do with the op-ed was be a call to action for Democrats. It was specifically for Democrats, but it's for all Americans, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent. The basic truth is the same.
They must have heard you, because in your great state of Pennsylvania, Senator Fetterman came to action and helped bridge the gap between and getting the budget done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a difficult situation. I think from his perspective and what he said in the media is that he felt that he didn't want to hold the government hostage any longer and felt that the Republicans were not going to budge on anything. He did what he thought was right. A lot of Democrats disagree, but at the end of the day, I don't think it was about, infighting in the party. It was about helping everyday Americans.
And I agree with you 110% that Americans should argue, but at a certain time they should sit down at the same round table and sit down and make a deal on whatever there is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need to get back to debating issues. No country succeeds by tearing itself apart. People want government to work for the people.
And that's what Newt Gingrich did with Bill Clinton. That's what Ronald Reagan did with Tip O'Neill. And it was a better America those days. Yeah. Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich took the deficit from $5.5 trillion, and they worked together, Democrats and Republicans, and brought it down to $5 trillion. Meredith Barak, let's talk about it another day again. And thank you for coming on, and God bless America. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break.
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com.
Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us today, like every Sunday, we have Governor David Paterson. Well, Governor Paterson, I mean, there's so many things going on. Where do you want to start this morning?
Well, I want to start with a long tradition of service by the Jewish community in this country, in this state, in this city. And they've always been in the forefront of great movements, particularly the one with Dr. Martin Luther King and that kind of thing. I thought the Jewish community pushed David Dinkins over in the 1989 mayoral election, who defeated Rudolph Giuliani. And Giuliani came back and won 4 years later. But there's always been this feeling of service. And I've been the recipient of it because I was in a lot of programs for the blind. And the people who work there, usually an extraordinary number of Jewish people who wanted to work helping people who had disabilities. Now, leaving that, 1 out of every 3 Jewish voters in last week's mayoral election were for Zoran Mamdani. I am shocked that he got 33% of the Jewish vote. And the reason I'm shocked is that I'm trying to figure out what was the issue. But this could really be a problem moving forward in this situation. I'm not blaming anybody for the fact that the mayor-elect won. I'm just saying that I find it's hard to understand how this happened.
I still don't understand, and I know Curtis is after both of us, but I still don't understand why he was beating up on Cuomo versus beating up on Mamdani, who was the clear and present danger.
I don't know why he did that, but I'll tell you, I think Curtis needs to see somebody because on the when he was interviewed, he said that we couldn't add 41 and 7 and not realize that even if he had gotten out, that there was no chance for Cuomo to win. I never said that. And I challenged Curtis to find the recording of me ever saying that. So while he's looking for that, let's get back to reality. And I think that one piece of very good news is that Dean Houlihan, who was the budget director for the Speaker of the New York State Assembly, the late Sheldon Silver, and was widely acclaimed for how well he worked with the legislators and how he could get them to negotiate. He is going to be the first deputy mayor for Mr. Mamdani. So it's good to see that a person with such little experience had the wisdom to get somebody with a lot of experience, and that might mitigate some of the damage that we fear.
But at the end of the day, the boss is the boss, and he's going to want to do whatever he wants to do.
Well, I think that when Houlihan was in Albany, he really understood that, and rarely did he get into any confrontations with the speaker, or if he did, we never really knew about him. He's the real deal, John. He's that good.
Do you think he's going to take the commissioner of the NYPD, and will he be the de facto commissioner and do whatever he wants?
I think that he's going to leave her there in the beginning. I think he does recognize what a good job she's done heading a few different agencies, how she herself could be the mayor. And I think he'll leave it alone for a while. And I think she will give him a chance. And they'll see, 6 to 9 months, maybe even shorter, if they can work together. And if they can work together, that's going to be a real plus for the new mayor.
The other thing that I've talked to Judge Weinberg about is the ability of the mayor to appoint a lot of judges. And if he appoints judges that are going to leave everybody in the streets, all the criminals in the streets, that's going to be dangerous.
When you pick judges, and I picked some judges when I was governor, what we saw it as, it was an academic pursuit. It wasn't, who voted for who or who's been supporting what. We tried to take the people that really understood what was going on, and I even had to pick a new chief judge, and all of those judges performed admirably. But if you're just doing it based on, who's your friend and some of the stuff that not only would Mayor Mondani be guilty of, but even there have been some appointments on the higher levels of the administration in Washington where it seemed more it was the relationship between the people. Nothing's gone wrong because of that so far, but it's something to keep an eye on. Judge Weinberg is right. This is not about who's your best friend. This is about who has performed most admirably to anoint themselves into that position.
Now, the upheaval in the entire Democratic Party, are you digesting it, or are you able to talk about it?
I do think that the party has been pulled a little bit to the left, but at the same time, I think that there are some up-and-coming leaders in the Democratic Party who I think could prevail on the vast number of Democrats, that you just can't be against everything all the time. And I think if we can get past that, then we can be far more competitive with our friends over on the other side of the aisle than we've been most recently.
Is there anybody in a common sense Democrats that have the courage to stand up against the socialists?
I think that if the new mayor tries to put into practice some of the issues that he campaigned on, he's going to find some significant resistance. But if he balances it, perhaps he can keep the party together. But that's going to be really more of a question for him than other Democrats, because I don't think there's an appetite for the extremist type of conduct that he has endorsed from time to time. I'm not saying that he did it, but he seemed to be appeasing people who did. That's not going to bring us to a very good conclusion at all.
David Paterson, thank you for your input, and let's catch up again real soon. And I hope,
John, hopefully by next week we will both get our hands out of the wall socket.
I agree. My hair is already sticking up. Finally, some good news from Albany for the real estate industry. With us today is Senator George Borrello, and he's the state senator in Western New York. And Senator Borrello, give us an update. What the hell happened in Albany that makes things better?
Well, I've been on your show in the past talking about this devastating natural gas ban, the all-electric buildings mandate that we were staring down the barrel of for January 1st. And I've been predicting that Governor Hochul would come up with some way to delay it because she's seeing the political fallout of this all around her, the economic devastation. And here we are. There was a lawsuit filed by members of the building trades that challenged this in federal court as not legal for the state to actually ban natural gas and natural gas appliances. Governor Hochul and her lawyers voluntarily agreed to suspend that January 1st deadline for the all-electric building mandate, which is key. But while this is a victory, and we will celebrate it, it's also, I think, just a political ruse. They're going to try to sandbag this in the courts to get her past the 2026 election. Her and other vulnerable Democrats that will see the fallout of the economic devastation of this mandate and are trying to avoid it, at least until after the election. That's why myself and my Republican colleagues have called on the governor to have a special session to officially repeal this all-electric building mandate.
Who is pushing electricity in our state and our country? There's got to be some lobbying group or somebody paying the money.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, the radical environmental groups that have been pushing this from the beginning, that are saying that we have to do this in order to save the planet, they've been pushing this. And in fact, they have been suing, they have threatened to sue to try to remove any of the mandates and deadlines that were set in place. And they actually won in court. And that's why this is important. You know, in a different lawsuit, the court said to the state government, sorry, you can't just arbitrarily move these deadlines that were put in place by the Democrats and Governor Hochul in the legislation that they passed, like the CLCPA. So now they have a real decision to make. Instead of just trying to, this continued bait and switch and pushing things off, they are going to have to actually come back and make real changes because the courts are forcing them to do that or to implement these incredibly devastating laws that are going to have such a huge negative impact on an economy here in New York that's already suffering greatly.
What else is going on in Albany? Any other good news?
Well, I think we're starting to see already the impact of Mamdani's election. The governor right now is trying to maneuver herself to push back on this tax the rich thing that Mamdani is talking about. She's already saying like the free buses that he's been pushing, which is one of the foundations of his campaign, is just not feasible, not practical. So she's pushing back on that. But we will see. At the end of the day, the governor endorsed Mamdani. She owns all of his bad ideas. And she did so because she fears herself of being challenged from the left. So this is going to be a real tug of war come January 1st. And New Yorkers have to realize that they have alternatives now. They have a choice, particularly in this governor's race with Elise Stefanik entering the fold, so we can have some balance and common sense restored in Albany. That will be the key to pushing back on some of the most radical, most devastating parts of Mamdani's agenda.
Senator George Borrello, thank you so much for coming on this Sunday morning, and thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you as well.
The Cats Roundtable.
Well, this is Paul Zuber, and he's the Senior Vice President of Business Council of the state of New York. Paul Zuber, give us the good news.
The good news, John, is I think that in many ways the governor realizes that some of these things that they're trying to do in terms of making a green New York and a renewable New York, that they needed to step back a little. And so it looks like they are going to hold off on the all-electric buildings mandate, which builders from throughout the state have said is going to be a major problem for building new homes, the cost of new homes. One of the problems that they had was, one of the builders said to me, the problem you have, Paul, is a gas-powered home becomes more valuable than the electric home. Plus, the electric home becomes more expensive to build. Therefore, what's going to happen is, why would you buy an all-electric home when you know the resale value of your gas-powered home is greater? So it was not only going to be an increase on consumers, it meant that the gas-powered homes would become more preferable, those would rise in price, and it would really stop building in New York State. And so what I equate this to is, anybody who's driven their car and they go around a very sharp turn, sometimes you got to pump your brakes. And I hope that the administration is pumping their brakes on this madness, which is the CLCPA or the climate law. We're not going to reach our goals. It's going to cost consumers more money. I don't think anybody out there says that, solar is bad or this is bad, but you can never get this done unless it's an all of the above approach. It should be natural gas, it should be nuclear, and you can include solar and wind in it. But when you start driving these mandates that are insane, it just leads to higher costs for consumers. And if anything, what the last several months have taught us is that the one issue that is driving New Yorkers out of the state and driving New Yorkers politically is affordability. And affordability is a huge problem. People are fed up, they're tired, and the last thing that people need is to see the cost of their electricity bill going up, because we're going down this path on a law that everybody, even the environmentalists, admit that we're not going to reach the statutory requirements that were part of that law.
Yes,
so
we're never going to have enough electricity in the next 5 years.
And we're never, and that's another thing. I haven't even mentioned what the electric grid is going to look like, and what we have to be concerned with is if we don't have enough electricity on the grid, what happens to the person that's sitting in their home? And this is the difference. Before, if you were in New York City, you always worried about too many people turning on their air conditioner in the summertime and potentially being a blackout. Yeah, obviously we've had some very famous blackouts in New York City. But the grid has gotten so sensitive, or there's so much concern with the electric grid that it could be very real that these blackouts could occur in the wintertime. And imagine being in an apartment in the wintertime, it's 20 degrees outside or it's below zero.
And if you have no electricity, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble, right? And so, it's finally some good news, because I think between that and between the governor's position on the recent court case that she lost, but where she fought releasing what was called the Cap and Invest program, it seems as though the governor is starting to realize that this is not something that needs to be pushed right now. It should go at its own pace. And that's good news for consumers in New York.
Paul Zuber, thank you so much for your update. And let's keep talking every week until we find out what the heck is going on. And thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us today is Fernando Montiel. He ran the United Bodegas of America. And Fernando, looks like we have a new mayor in town. And I'd like to know the reaction of the Hispanic community. Seems like not only are they socialist, but they're Muslim. Is the religion going to come into play at all?
Well, listen, the Hispanic community respects every religion. We respect the Jewish religion, the Muslim religion, the Catholic, and the Christians. I think this is beyond religion. We know that Zoran is a Muslim. We know that his power base was from the Muslim community, which I commend, because they came together like no other community came together to get their candidate elected. But, what we need to do now is we need to make sure that we have a seat on the table, that we can deliver for the city, for our people. We need access to the Mandami administration. What was done was done. He is the next mayor. We have to respect him. We have to make sure that he succeeds, as the leader of our city. But we need to make sure that there's rationale. We need to make sure that he's going to listen to everyone, not just one specific community. And I think that things could have been different, but they're not. So we have to work with the new mayor-elect. So what do we do now to stretch our hands and say, hey, let's work together and make New York City the best city in the world?
We've never had a religious disputes in our city or in our country, and I just hope it doesn't start now, because the only thing against that I didn't like Zoran about was his socialist ideas. It had nothing to do with religion.
Well, listen, socialism is something that none of us like. We are all capitalists. We came to this country to make a living, to create opportunities for others, because believe it or not, socialists have to admit that it is the risk takers, the small business people that employ the vast majority of New Yorkers. So he needs to have respect for capitalism. What I'm hoping is that he brings the city together, brings religion together. The Muslim religion's a beautiful religion, like the Catholics, like the Jews, we all have our beliefs, and that's okay. But listen, he mobilized the Muslim community like no one else. And guess what? We now know that when you mobilize and you energize a community and they come together, you're a winner. He won this election. He won it when he won the primary. There's nothing more to be said about that other than what are we going to do to make our city better? Now, we have a more important election coming up next year, which is the gubernatorial election. We want to know where are the Republicans in town. Okay, we want to know who is going to mobilize us and energize us the way Mandami mobilized and energized the Muslim and the younger communities here in New York, right?
Yes.
That's what we need to focus on. We have to forget what happened. He won fair and square. He is the next mayor. Now let's help him be the best mayor for the city of New York and for the people of New York.
Well, I hope he picks a good team around him, and I hope he listens to that team.
Well, listen, John, we have a big mic. We have a bully pulpit. So you know what? That bully pulpit will be there to denounce or applaud what his actions are, what he does. We need to be on air daily, speaking about the issues of New York State, who's going to be our next governor, how we're going to energize, how we're going to win, because we need a balance. We have a Democratic Socialist mayor. We need a good, solid Republican governor, okay? Someone that's going to govern for all the people and someone that's going to be the watchdog over New York City. We have the president. He's certainly going to be a watchdog, right? But we also need someone that's going to watch out for the interests of the capitalists, the interests of the people who take risk, of the bodega owners, of the taxi drivers, of supermarket owners, you name it. We need someone that's going to watch out for the interests of the risk takers, make sure that they don't lose what they've invested in their small business.
Fernando, you're 100% correct. And let's stay in touch and let's see what happens. Thank you, Fernando.
Take care.
And with us today is Frank Tarantino, and he's the special agent in charge of Drug Enforcement Administration for the New York Division. Frank, have you seen progress in New York?
Well, John, first, it's great to be back on your show. As you know, we've seen a 25% decrease across the country in overdose deaths, and we're seeing a significant decrease in overdose deaths here in New York City. And that's a credit to all the men and women in law enforcement, specifically the Drug Enforcement Administration. We have had a number of really great investigations recently. Washington Square Park comes to mind, arrest of 19 drug traffickers who were responsible for the overdose death of two people, one an 18-year-old who moved here from Colorado for an internship. Bailey Shaw died 2 days after she arrived. Just tragic events unfolding here in New York City, but we held them accountable. Those 19 people are going to be held accountable for causing the death of those two people, which is a significant charge in the federal system. And then, of course, we had the great case into Sophia Marks and that organization, responsible for 3 overdose deaths of 3 New Yorkers, 2 of which were 19-year-olds. And unfortunately, because of the predatory drug traffickers that were trying to make money, they became victims of their criminal activity. And so those are the kinds of cases that make a difference in the community. And then recently, John, we had a great case out in Long Island, information the DEA received, turned into a multi-jurisdictional case from the Bronx all the way out to the tip of Long Island, involving 24 pounds of different types of drugs, to include 4 kilograms of fentanyl. About 250,000 people could have died from that fentanyl alone. So you're talking about significant impact throughout the communities that we live, work, and try to enjoy ourselves every single day here in this city.
But you could assure all Americans that you feel that we are making progress.
Absolutely, John. You know, the New York City Police Department and the Drug Enforcement Administration are in lockstep. We coordinate and deconflict and share information so that we can have the greatest impact in this city to primarily keep the citizens safe, to protect the communities, and to allow the young people to go out and enjoy what this city has to offer. And that's the collaborative effort that is going on every single day here. Of course, we're working with our federal partners. We're going after these very violent transnational criminal organizations that are making money hand over fist and are really influencing the drug trade throughout New York. And so that's our focus.
President Trump talked to President Xi of China, and they're trying to eliminate the fentanyl going from the Chinese gangs to the Mexican gangs. Also, the boats coming out of Venezuela with drugs to kill our youth, our kids, and our citizens, and they're blown up. And there's some politicians that are objecting to it, and I'm scratching my head. I'm wondering why, because if we blow up the fentanyl and the drugs, it saves lives. What do you think?
You know, John, since January of 2025, on 7 different occasions, the New York Division has seized up to nearly 15,000 kilograms of cocaine transiting through the Gulf of America on many different types of vessels, to include go-fast boats and semi-submersibles. And during these operations, we've arrested a number of different Mexican nationals and Colombian nationals, and that's the work that we do every day. And our president is actually using all the means necessary at his disposal to solve this problem.
Special Agent Frank Tarantino, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for everything you do, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, John.
The Cats Roundtable.
What's going on in Wall Street? What's going on in the markets? I mean, well, the one good guy I know is Charlie Gasparino, a contributor and a Fox host. Charlie Gasparino, what the hell happened in the White House with all those CEOs, with President Trump, et cetera, et cetera? You fill us in.
Well, it was a love fest. That's what I mean. You know, Trump could control the room. Yeah, that's basically from what I understand. And it was a love fest, and there wasn't much pushback. Trump talked about affordability a lot. He won't go as far as to call it a crisis. The CEOs are skeptical of some of the solutions. The 50-year mortgage, the tariff rebates, just throw money at people. Beating up on Powell when you have a spike in interest rates, when you have a spike in inflation, to lower rates. It's just kind of, no one said this. This was all what was said afterwards or before, maybe. But I think what I'm hearing, it's like this is not the headline that you saw. Behind the scenes, that Trump's people are worried about his standing politically. There is an affordability crisis. No one doubts it. I mean, the tariffs are adding to inflationary pressure. Housing prices, for a lot of reasons, are high, and some of that, you can deal with through policy. A lot of it can't. It's kind of got to let the free market work its way through. Whether you're, by saying there's no crisis and by calling it a Democratic con job, which the president has done, it doesn't address the issue. And this is a salient issue. I mean, Zohar Mandami used it again. New York's kind of an outlier because it's a leftist sort of city. But, the other Democrats used it and won, even though they're the reasons. Democratic Party policies are the reasons, John, why we have an affordability crisis. We have rent control here in New York, which makes it very difficult to build middle-income housing and rental properties. We do a lot of things. We have We have huge high taxes in this state and lots of debt, and we're chasing out the most productive people, the 1% with taxes. So those are the sort of issues that I think the Republican Party needs to come to grips with and have a conversation with, and not like feed the issue of affordability to the Zohran Mandamis of the world. And, you know, the president is not quite there. And I think from what I understand, people are worried about this.
I mean, Governor Hochul the other day said she met for an hour and a half with Maldami and said she'll consider raising taxes. I mean, if she does that means more people move.
I mean, it's like a spiral. It's a doom loop. I mean, haven't they learned that every time we raise taxes, people leave? Cuomo raised taxes a few years ago. People left. You know, and more people are going to leave, and people can leave, and it's easy. Connecticut is a lower tax state, and you can commute in very easily. And if you notice, they're not raising taxes in Connecticut for a reason.
Yes.
Then Lamont is inviting all the most productive people to open up business there.
Over the last 10 years, I think the population of New York has gone down like 3 million or something like that.
Yes, and you know what is it being replaced by? Migrants, poor immigrants. This is not a city that needs to build the subways, and we get a lot of.
Well, I just want everybody to know, according to the studies, is Maldami got elected. 85% of his vote, 85% of the 80% was people that moved into New York in the last 5 years.
I mean, New Yorkers know the difference. But, you know, listen, running away from this is not the issue. I mean, the Republicans have to address this. They have to address how tariffs have added on to those pressures. I mean, this could be an ugly midterm. I mean, we'll say Democratic Party has got other issues that are that could negate this, including the fact that they're so far left. That Mandami is a star, and this guy is a complete imbecile leftist. Let's be clear. I mean, you know, they have. I mean, the party of AOC is a really bad look nationally. So, the Republicans do nationalize the election with some of the leftists that are taking over. Running the show, they can win. They can negate these issues. But this affordability thing is a big thing. And Trump's people are worried. And I'm telling you, John, 50-year mortgages are not going to deal with it. $2,000 tariff checks are not going to help. It's just not. And then they walked back. I mean, it's kind of like they were really caught flat-footed on this.
Charlie Gasparino, we're out of time, but let's continue our conversation during the week, and let's see if this market turns around.
You got it. Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us today is, like every Sunday, is Dr. Sky, otherwise known as Steve Cates, or Steve Cates, otherwise known as Dr. Sky. Well, Steve, what the heck is going on?
John, the world and the space area is filled with good information, but let's start and begin with the sun. The sun has been belching out, John, these powerful X-level flares. That means that the Earth is being hit by these proton storms. And just last week on Wednesday, a major event called the ground level event. What's that? A solar flare on the X scale of number 5, which means that a lot of that radiation, the protons, are actually penetrating deep into the Earth. Does it mean that people have to be worried? No, but the chance, John, of seeing the northern lights and maybe some disruptions in radio communications are, all for the offering right there. The sun is continuing, John, to belch out power.
Me and you discuss things. I just can't believe mentally, because maybe our minds don't go not that big.
Yes.
How the sun just goes on forever and doesn't burn out. I mean, for billions of years.
John, you're right.
It is just mind-boggling.
It is amazing. But here's some details teasing the mystery of the week. We might as well give it now. The question is, how does the sun create energy over 4 billion years? What goes on in the sun? John, imagine this. If we all got a utility bill about what I'm talking about, every second the sun is consuming 600 million tons of hydrogen, and it's moving into some 4 million tons that is converting some of that, to energy. And the rest, if you subtracted from the 600 and the 600 million, you'd wind up with seeing the rest of that is converted into helium. What's the simple explanation, John? It's called fusion. And that's something we're hopefully trying to get here done on the Earth. Can you imagine, John, if we had the ability to have fusion reactors, there'd be really no complaints anymore about the energy in this particular, on our planet. That would be quite amazing. But the sun's doing it, John, like you said, relentlessly for 4 billion years. And the sun, John, is not even a giant star. It's classified as a dwarf star among the trillions in the solar system and the universe, more precisely. Closer to home, we're finding out that the Chinese astronauts, which they call Titanauts, on board the Tiangong space station, here we go again, they're saying that 3 of their Shenzhou 20 crew members may be stranded in space. Why? They're not revealing much. The Chinese do not really reveal any kind of failures. They don't like to report this stuff. They keep it under their hat. So we think, and this is what many space experts believe, that the Tiangong might have been hit by space debris, John. We've talked about that for a long time. So we don't know. It's a little too early, to jump the gun as to how these astronauts will be returned, or if not, they can get, maybe stay there for just a little bit longer. Kind of reminiscent, John, of what we had last year when we had 2 astronauts that were there in space, and finally they returned. So it's interesting. Space is becoming very crowded. Now, in the low Earth orbit, John, it's becoming overpopulated to the point that every time you take a picture in the night sky of something, you see all these streaks photobombing the entire image. Lots of stuff going on in low Earth orbit.
You're on every Saturday and Sunday from midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning, and you had a show about the streaming from airplanes.
Oh, we were talking about the jet contrails, John. This is interesting. And we had a gentleman on there.
Any conclusions on that?
Well, the guest that we had, John, believes very strongly that it's a government event, and I don't know if I agree, but the point is, I find it a little hard to believe. I'm not the expert in the geoengineering area. That's why we have guests. But the simple conclusion here so far is that this individual believes very strongly that the government is pumping these type of aerosols into the atmosphere. And some claim, I don't know if I agree with it, I'm just reporting what I heard and what the listeners heard, is that there's particulates of aluminum. So what they're trying to do, if this is true, John, again, I can't prove it, we'll continue to investigate it on the Dr. Sky Experience, is that there may be some truth to the fact, if they want to change the heating of the Earth, that these aluminum particulates and other particles reflect light back into space, thus reducing, at least in some people's minds, the ability for the Earth to absorb so much heat. Now, that's a bizarre story if it's to many out there, or maybe many people believe it's true. John, the jury's out, and we're going to keep investigating this until we get some other sides of the story, so we can report it on the Dr. Sky Experience with accuracy.
We have anybody left that feels that the Earth is flat?
John, it's so funny. There are some people out there, and actually there was a fake that was produced by AI in one noted astronomer who always believed, of course, that the Earth is round. But now you can do all these things. You have to be careful out there. If you go out like we do on media, somebody apparently deep-faked somebody, and this particular astrophysicist was saying in his own voice, yes, he believes now the Earth is flat. So I don't know too many people, John, that really believe that. But again, right, we have to be careful of what people can do to us. They could make what you're saying the opposite, or make what I'm saying totally opposite. So you have to be careful of what you see on there, especially on the internet, John.
Yes, absolutely. Especially this AI, I really don't trust it right now.
Well, absolutely, John. There's good sides to it, where people can go and have medical procedures with these scientific instruments, little Da Vinci's. But if indeed we wind up having something go out of the box, well, not to scare the listeners on Sunday, but they're all too smart to recognize that that could be a dark side of this whole thing called artificial intelligence. We'll have to see and hope for the best.
Thank you. Steve Cates, anything else for Sunday morning?
Well, John, I want to mention something people can see. And now, if people look tonight, Sunday night, into midnight, into the morning of the 17th, if you have clear skies, the Leonid meteor shower begins. It's from the constellation Leo the Lion. It rises around midnight and high up in the sky by sunrise. But, John, in 1833, before he became president, Abraham Lincoln witnessed what we call a giant Leonid storm. And according to many reliable sources, John, way back then, they didn't have internet, there were hundreds of thousands of meteors per hour. And in 1966 in southern Arizona, John, can you imagine seeing this? Around 5:30 in the morning, there was a stream of meteors and a storm so powerful, there were over 500,000 meteors an hour for about an hour. That would be off the charts. So the Leonids, you never know what you're going to get. And sometimes I get emails at drsky@wabcradio.com that say, well, Dr. Sky, you told us we're going to see meteors. And meteors are very fickle, John, just like they all come from comets. And one person said, a noted comet discoverer, that comets and cats are alike. How are they? Well, they both have tails, and they do exactly what they want. So all these meteors are coming from comets. How about that? Isn't that interesting?
Steve Cates, Dr. Sky, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again next Sunday.
Always a pleasure. Have a good Sunday morning, and you and the listeners. Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
Well, with us today is John Terrett. John, the market, what a roller coaster we had. You tell me what happened.
Well, I think there are two things going on. First of all, it is the end of the build-up to the end of the government shutdown, as it were, and all the exuberance that went with that. But you're quite right. There seems to be a whisper campaign going on, coming from the office of the boss of the central bank, Jerome Powell, that maybe, just maybe, there won't be an interest rate cut coming up in December. It started a couple of weeks ago, and it seems to be continuing now. Wall Street's pretty convinced there will be, so we'll see what happens. Other headlines this week, a big shock at the House of the Mouse, the Walt Disney Company. They beat with their earnings, but they missed big time with their revenue. It was pretty much flat. Streaming is propping up linear TV advertising, which continues to fall. Disney Plus added 3.8 million subscribers in the quarter. Movies are slow and costly. Parks did okay, but there's a dispute with YouTube, which is costing Disney $30 million a week. So on Thursday, Disney shares, when the news came out, were down 7%. Verizon has a new boss. He said he needed to act to save the company, so he's axing 15,000 jobs around the country. Wall Street went to the White House this week, a private dinner with President Trump. Jamie Dimon was there, David Solomon, Ted Pick, Larry Fink, and the bosses of the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ, as Trump tries to get to know Wall Street better. Visa and MasterCard settled a 20-year dispute with retailers this week over credit card swiping fees. It needs a judge's approval, though. And in the crypto world, the big story of the week was Coinbase, which is America's biggest cryptocurrency exchange. It trades at the NASDAQ. They're moving their business from Delaware, where they're registered, to Texas because they see better business conditions there. Now, on the markets, heavy selling at the back end of last week. That whisper campaign I was just talking about, the end of the shutdown. Many people still think Dow 50,000 is a possibility, but probably not for a while. In the week ahead, John, NVIDIA earnings come up on Wednesday. That's the company in the forefront of the AI development. Everyone's talking about that. But we should also be talking about big retail names. Walmart, Target, HD, all Home Depot, that is, all giving us their earnings in the next 5 days. And it's important because it will show us where Americans are spending. In other words, what they have to spend on and what they might choose to spend on. John
Terrett, thank you so much, and let's catch up again real soon.
Thanks, John. See you next week. Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to wabcradio.com, go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segment. Thank you for being with us for the Cats Roundtable Local Edition, the #1 show on Sunday mornings in New York. Keep listening to us for the Cats Roundtable National Edition between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, so we'll be back to you in a few minutes after the news.
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.